Good Thursday morning, everyone. Here we are, another day. We are reporting live from Black Hat USA 2023 here at Mandalay Bay. And it's my pleasure to be joined with an old friend, an old colleague actually, John Shier, Field CTO. And we're going to talk about Sophos's latest report, this time on the Royale situation.
That's right.
So welcome, first of all.
Thanks, Bill. It's
How's
good
your
to
week
see you,
going?
and yeah, it's going all right. It's typical, hacker summer camp with B-Sides, Black Hat, and DEF CON coming up. So it's a busy week, but always fun to see old friends and talk security.
Yeah. So let's dig in with this new threat.
Yeah.
So let's start by just going through what Sophos has found about
Right.
the behavior of this and who the biggest targets are,
Right.
etc. And we'll go from there.
Sounds good. So at Black Hat, we released the Sophos XOps team released a report based on some MDR investigations that we did. And so our incident response analysts were looking at some cases independently, and they started noticing some interesting correlations, right? They noticed a bunch of cases that had identical file names. These were scripts, they were batch scripts, but they had identical file names, and then the scripts themselves were also identical. They noticed that the threat actors in these cases were creating usernames with the same username, same passwords in order to get persistence and escalate privilege. And when they were creating 7-zip archives for payload, they were also using the identical passwords, right? So in and of themselves, these indicators probably don't amount to much. But when you start to stack one on top of another, you start to see these patterns, and you start to see that maybe they're related. So these investigations involved 3 different ransomware groups. So they all occurred earlier this year, and one of them was a Hive ransomware attack. And so we know that Hive is no longer with us, thankfully. And the other one was a Basta attack. But what was really interesting is that these indicators also kind of ensnared Royal ransomware in there as well. Now we know that Hive and Basta use affiliates, but Royal to this day, as far as most of the threat intelligence is concerned, is a private group that does not use affiliates. So why were they lumped in with a group that, or at least with indicators that was involving ransomware as a service? And that's kind of the question that we started asking ourselves as we were digging through the research and the investigation.
So you've already answered this question in detail, but I'm going to circle back around because, when it comes to the subject of ransomware, there's a lot of fatigue
Sure.
that goes on. And with that in mind, if you could boil it down to a sentence or two, what you just outlined as the tactics and patterns, talk about why they matter. Why is this important?
If to really boil it down, we could say time to detect, right? And as defenders, the ability to shorten that time to detect then allows you to go into response that much quicker. It buys you time for response, but it also allows you to go into response that much quicker.
Yeah.
If you can detect sooner, if you can detect earlier in the attack chain, then your response playbook can, you can make sure that the attack itself can be kind of neutralized and neutered before it causes a lot of damage. But then your response playbooks can take over and clean it up as efficiently as possible.
Now, and I have, just for those keeping along, I keep my questions here so I don't forget anything. So
I wish I could keep my answers here.
you could have. We would have let you have your laptop on top. But anyway, here we are. So how do organizations look for these activity clusters that we've just been talking about?
As far as organizations individually, right, we produce this intelligence specifically so that, and a lot of companies that produce reports are giving things like IOCs and all sorts of different indicators for companies to be able to do some of this hunting themselves, right? So that's why we publish them, and we want you to be able to know what some of these attacks look like. the thing that's interesting about what we're calling threat activity clusters, right, is that we're not so much trying to give you attribution, but we're trying to give you a bit of a roadmap of what some of these attacks look like so that you can detect them sooner, right? So if A follows B follows C, you know that D, E, and F are shortly going to happen in your network, right? And so this is what we're trying to do, is we're saying, in this particular case, this set of threat activity indicators, right, A, B, and C, was related to these distinct threat actors. It leads you to attribution down the road potentially, right? Because you know that if the attack runs its course, then it's Royal, or it's Lockbit, or it's whomever, right? But we're really trying to get people to detect sooner so that we can, again, prevent the most damaging steps of the attacks from occurring, namely the encryption and also some of the data theft that occurs with a lot of these ransomware crews.
And just, this is a bit of a backtrack, but
Sure.
it just occurred to me I wanted to ask. Royale, are we definitely looking at the affiliate model?
I don't think we can say with 100% of certainty that they're moving to an affiliate model.
Yeah.
If we just look at the history of that group in context with their ancestry, if you will, right? Grew up at Oriak, a private group, which then spawned off Conti, a ransomware as a service group, which when they split up, split into a whole bunch of different, we know there's some associations between Royal, Black Basta, Karakurt, which is a data extortion group.
That's why
right?
I asked.
So the individuals involved, and in this particular set of attacks, I think it was probably the same individuals that were part of the different programs, right? Mm-hmm. Of the different ransomware programs. And it could just be that they're buddies with the old Conti / Royal / whatever crews, right? Or it could be that Royal is trialing a model of affiliates. It could be a one-off. It's really hard to tell, and unless we ask the Royal guys themselves, right? But I don't think they tell us.
It's a stay tuned kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a lagging indicator in this case, right?
Yeah. So talk about how Sophos customers can leverage everything Sophos is doing right now on this front with MDR,
right.
with everything from that to endpoint detection, endpoint
right.
protection, whatnot. Talk about the Sophos approach.
Yeah, so our MDR team has the skills, the expertise, and the availability and bandwidth to be able to proactively monitor networks 24/7, 365, right?
Yep.
And if we sort of unpick that a little bit, right? When I talk about skills and expertise, obviously there's a lot of people out there, the black hat floor is full of people with the necessary skills to do this stuff, but not every company has those people working for them. It can be expensive to spin up your own SOC. And if your core competency as a business isn't necessarily in IT, right, it takes some investment to get there. So we have those people working for us. We have the experience and expertise, meaning that we see these attacks day in, day out across our 17,000 plus customer base, right? And we're able to make these correlations. We're able to make these inferences and spot patterns within the data because it's such a large data set that an individual company might not be able to do. If you get attacked by Royal, for example, it's the first time you've probably been attacked by Royal. So it's going to take you a little bit of time to sort of get your feet under you and understand what is the typical attack playbook. Whereas we see Royal dozens of times a day, right? We see these guys attempting to breach networks all the time. So we can spot those indicators sooner. And so by partnering with the Sophos team, Sophos MDR, what you're getting is these professionals that are able to spot these signals sooner, alert the customers, proactively neutralize these threats, again, before they get to a stage where things like ransomware get deployed on the network. We also kind of know your strengths and weaknesses, right? We know that within different sectors, there are certain concessions you need to make from a security standpoint. Think about healthcare, right? All the patient care machines.
Right.
You can't really have multi-factor authentication on those machines because people's lives depend on you being able to access the drug cart, the charts, those kinds of things. So let's architect your security a little bit differently, right? And so we know those kinds of things. And finally, we have the sector size and all sorts of visibility that if we see, let's say, a geographical, right? If we see a Spanish language campaign emerge, then we can also look in the rest of our Spanish-speaking constituency and see, is that campaign happening there as well? And if it's not, we can proactively get ahead of it to make sure that it's not successful in, especially if we think about going through the day, right?
Yeah. Am I hearing right? You guys have an Active Directory report coming out?
We have a report, an active adversary report.
Did I just say Active Directory?
You sure did.
This is what happens 3 days into Black Hat for me.
I feel you.
I start to say one word when I meant another.
But that slip is interesting because there's some very interesting Active Directory statistics within the report. I don't want to scoop myself, but the criminals are very quickly going after Active Directory once they breach your network after the initial compromise. Yeah. But yeah, so the Active Adversary report is it's a study of all the IR cases that we undertake. So we released one of these back in April for the calendar year of 2022, and I just finished data collection and analysis for the first 6 months of this year. So it's going to be all fresh data and analyses on those cases as well, and we're going to compare and contrast those to some of the previous reports as well.
And we will be here to write about that
when
the time comes. This has been a pleasure. Before we go, I also want to mention anything more that anyone wants to learn about Sophos, about Security Weekly, please feel free to visit securityweekly.com/SophosBH, as in Black Hat. We'll be back.